Football players are really expensive. The total money spent by clubs around the world this summer reached almost £9 billion, the record for any transfer window in history. It's also more than the yearly GDP of entire countries like Togo, Barbados, and Montenegro. But of course, these fees are nothing new. It's actually been quite some time now that we've seen football players go for tens and even hundreds of millions. But I bet you don't really know where it all started. Back in 1995, a Belgian midfielder by the name of Bosman found himself completely stuck. His contract had expired, but his club refused to let him leave unless another team paid a fee. Outraged, he took his case all the way to the European Court of Justice and won. The landmark ruling gave players a right to walk away for free once their deals ran out, and it also scrapped restrictions on foreign EU players. For the first time, football players held real leverage. If a club didn't sell them before their contract expired, they risked losing them for nothing, forcing clubs to either renew contracts early with higher wages or cash in and sell them while they still could. As a result, fees inflated, salaries soared, and the modern transfer market was born. I'm Edu. My goal is to bring out the analytical side of football one video at a time, and today, along with research from Carlos, my best friend and former pro footballer himself, we're going to break down why football players cost so much, and more importantly, what actually determines their value on the transfer market. Now, for many years after the Bosman ruling, the truly outrageous fees in the market were still only reserved for the best of the best. Global icons like Figo, Zidane, and of course, Ronaldo in 2009. Naturally, fees continued to rise over the years, but it's really only since Neymar's ridiculous €222 million transfer in 2017 that the market has felt completely out of control. It's gotten to the point nowadays that you can see completely unproven players regularly crack the €100 million mark, often before playing a single game in Europe's top 5 leagues. The first question that might come to mind when you look at this insanity is how football players can possibly be worth so much money. And the summarized answer is actually pretty straightforward. The football industry is simply enormous. Global football generates more than $40 billion in annual revenues. The Champions League final draws audiences bigger than the Super Bowl, and clubs like Real Madrid or Manchester United are billion-dollar businesses on their own. With that much money flowing around, transfer fees scale up accordingly, which is why, if you ask me, the more interesting question is what factors determine a given player's price in this bloated football market. The obvious first answer would be, well, just how good a player is. Their talent level, the eye test, their stats, production in terms of goals, other counting stats like clean sheets or ball recoveries if you're talking about a more defensive player. And of course, that's all true. It makes sense that the main source of a player's transfer value stems from their individual impact on the field. The better the player, the more you can expect to pay. But here's the thing, you'd be surprised at just how much other factors can swing the final price of a transfer, and how many different levers there actually are. Another pretty obvious one is age. Two players can deliver the exact same output right now, but the younger one will almost always command a bigger fee, which is why studies show that the transfer market follows an inverted U-shape when it comes to age. Players tend to peak in value somewhere around their mid-20s, and either side of that curve, the numbers drop. Injury history, for example, is also an important factor when it comes to how much teams are willing to put up. And again, the logic is straightforward. If a player's body is broken down before, there's a higher chance that it'll break down again. Kinda like buying a car with a history of engine issues. Arjen Robben is an interesting example of this. In 2009, Real Madrid let him go to Bayern Munich for just $25 million, largely because of his injury record during his time at the club. But once at Munich, he stayed fit enough to dominate for nearly a decade, scoring in a Champions League final and becoming a club legend. And it's transfers like that show how much of a business this all really is. Clubs aren't just paying for talent, they're pricing in risk, and sometimes, a lot of the times, they get it wrong. But risk doesn't only come from a player's body, it can also come from his contract, or more precisely, how many years he has left on it. Take Thiago Alcantara in 2020. Fresh off winning the treble with Bayern, his transfer market value was around €48 million. But with only 1 year left on his deal and refusing to extend, Bayern's leverage collapsed. Liverpool ended up signing him for about €25 million, nearly half of what he was reportedly worth. On the other side of the spectrum, you have Neymar in 2017. With nearly 4 years left on his contract, PSG had no negotiating room. To get him, they were forced to trigger his full €222 million release clause, resulting in the biggest transfer fee in football history. All of this just comes to show that a player's quality is only one part of a much bigger equation when it comes to his actual value on the transfer market, or as most fans know it best, Transfermarkt. Transfermarkt.com has basically become the internet's unofficial price tag for footballers, and to their credit, they're usually pretty good. According to their own website, their values are based on things like player performance, age, contract length, injury history, demand from clubs, and peer comparisons within the market. And overall, studies suggest that transfer market values track the real market quite closely, but there's still some missing pieces in there that explain why they can be way off at times. Things like the financial power of the buying club, the negotiating stance of the selling club, and sometimes the timing of the deal. When United came calling for Harry Maguire in 2019, Leicester knew they had all the leverage. United were desperate to sign a center back, had few alternatives, and plenty of money to spend. And that combination of rich buyer, urgent need, and patient seller drove the price up to £80 million, a world record fee for a defender and far above his transfer market valuation. Timing can be just as powerful, like when Benfica were able to demand €120 million for Enzo Fernandez in January of 2023. He had just won the World Cup, Chelsea were in the middle of a spending spree, and the release clause gave Benfica all the leverage. The result? A transfer fee that doubled its transfer market valuation at the time. And it's not just individual cases like that. Sometimes entire positions can become inflated depending on the moment. In the summer of 2023, for example, defensive midfielders became the hottest commodity in football. Declan Rice signed for Arsenal for over £100 million. Chelsea dropped a British record £115 million on Moises Caicedo. And even a 19-year-old Romeo Lavia cost £60 million. 3 players, the same role, all commanding massive fees in the space of a few weeks. Not because their quality had suddenly skyrocketed, but because the market for their position had exploded. By now, it should be clear that there isn't a single formula that sets transfer fees. It's a cocktail of different forces, from age and injuries to contracts, club power, and timing. Which is why the next time you see a 9-figure transfer and think, no way he's worth that, you might actually be right. At least if you're only looking at what happens on the pitch. Because in the background, there's almost always a bigger equation at play. And that's pretty much all for me, guys. I hope you enjoyed this little discussion on player transfer fees, and if you can think of any other factors that I didn't mention, please don't forget to drop them down in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts as well. I'm Edu, thank you for watching, and we'll catch you all in the next one.